See, Moses had warned the people of Israel when they came into the promised land. He said, now listen, you need to keep the commandments of God, the commandments that God gave you. If you keep those commandments, you will have blessings. But if you don't keep these commandments, if you become faithless, you'll be just like those people that you are overcoming in the land of Canaan. These people you are overthrowing. You will be just like them, and you will have curses. He warns them. He tells them, don't fall for what these people are doing. But what did they do? They did exactly what they weren't supposed to do. So God, in his normal manner, he sends prophets. And there's a couple I just want to mention that I think are pretty prominent. First one I want to mention is Hosea. Hosea is telling a story about his wife, Gomer. Gomer seems like a strange name for a woman, but I don't know. I'm not so sure I'd name my child Gomer, but her name was Gomer. And he's telling the story, he's talking about his wife because God is telling him to go and get her because she's a prostitute. He's telling Hosea to marry a woman who is unfaithful. And even after he marries her, she continues to be unfaithful to the point where Hosea has to go and buy her. Imagine that. She's your wife and you have to buy her. And in the process of telling this, I think Hosea and we all of a sudden realize, now wait a minute. That is not just a story about some guy named Hosea and his wife Gomer. That's the story of God and Israel. They were God's chosen people. And yet, they did not follow him. They were unfaithful. They were faithless. And God has to pay for them. And in fact, that's the story of us. We are faithless. And God has to send something. He has to pay for us. And that is what the Passion Week is about. Because God is paying the price for us. The other prophet I want to share with you is Jeremiah. Anybody know what his nickname is? The Weeping Prophet. Perfect nickname for Jeremiah because in Jeremiah 9, he prays to God. He says, God, make my head a bucket full of water, and my eyes fountains, so that I can weep for Jerusalem day and night. He is the weeping prophet. Because what had happened was they had gone back and forth. They were followed. They would have a good king and then they'd have a bad king. Have a good king and bad king. And so goes the king, so goes the people. And God had it. He had had enough. And he was going to teach them. And he was going to use the Assyrians to do it. So now we come forward to this day outside of Jerusalem. And we go forward to this time when Jesus is getting ready to make his big entry. And we see Jesus weeping for Jerusalem. You see, I don't think that we really get a good idea of what the term weeping really means in Hebrew. It's not necessarily just to shed a tear. My wife, she's not in here so I can talk about her. She'll laugh about this because she really will. My wife cries at commercials. And I'm sure there are others in here who cry at a commercial. And I always know when she's crying. I can tell. And I'll look over at her and she'll have a tear coming down her eye. That I love that about her. You know, I do. I really love the fact that she is that emotional and that tied to the welfare of others. But I don't think that's what Jesus was doing here. I don't think he just had a tear coming down his eyes, because the Jewish term for weeping is more in line with wailing. If you've ever seen a Middle Eastern funeral, it's not just people sitting there quiet. They are wailing. They are just pouring out their tears. And I think that is part of the passion of Christ, is the fact that he has so much love for Jerusalem and for the people in Jerusalem that his heart is just broken because of how they are. And the fact that they have the very Son of God in their presence and they ignore him.